Mic check 1 2 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and the Dreamcast is still one of my favorite consoles to play, even in 2025. And the reason for that is because one, it's way ahead of its time. The graphics still look pretty good for a console this old, and also because they're still releasing games for this console, new games, and they're actually still porting games to this console. One of the big things that has been going around, and I think Modern Vintage Gamer did a video on this, but it was the Grand Theft Auto 3 port to the Sega Dreamcast, which a lot of people would consider an impossible port. But one of the biggest things that I don't think a lot of people realize or remember, because I think if you're older and if you're from, if you grew up with the Dreamcast and you grew up during the height of the Dreamcast era, you'll remember that there was one specific thing about the Dreamcast that made it different from other consoles, and that was the lack of security that the Dreamcast had when it came to preventing pirated games from running on the console. There really wasn't much that Sega did to prevent customers or consumers from being able to basically burn their own games. And so now in 2025, the Dreamcast might be the most affordable console when you consider the fact that all you really need is a $30 CD burner from Amazon to be able to burn every game in the Dreamcast library and play those games. Now, obviously, I'm not a supporter of pirating video games. I'm not saying that this is something that you should do, but this is something that a lot of people did, including myself, back in the day when I was younger and I couldn't afford to buy every new Dreamcast game that came out. I didn't have a CD burner back then, but, well, actually, I didn't have one initially. Initially, I had a friend who had a CD burner, and what they would do is they would just come to school every day and ask, okay, what games do you want for the Dreamcast? And they would sell burnt video games to to our classmates, and they had a nice little hustle going on. They would sell burnt Dreamcast games for $5 a pop, and if there was a game that you wanted, he'd go home, burn it, and the next day you had it right there in school. It wasn't until later that I actually had a laptop that had the ability to write CDs that I wound up burning I think one or two games for the Dreamcast. I think one of them was definitely Spider-Man, and I think the other one might have been Crazy Taxi. Those are the two games that I had burnt. But this is something that you can do today if the Dreamcast library is a bit too expensive for you. And don't get me wrong, I could definitely understand why someone would rather burn a Dreamcast game than buy one, because some of the best games on the Dreamcast are pretty expensive. And I'll take you through some of my favorites. I don't have the entire library. In fact, I had a large Dreamcast collection, and I actually scaled it down to around 25 to 30 games. And I wound up selling off a lot of the other ones, but I'll share with you the games that I kept that I appreciated. We'll go through them. The first one is Techromancer on the Dreamcast. This is actually like a 3D fighting game. If you've ever played the game Cyberbots on the Sega Saturn, to me, this is like the 3D version of Cyberbots on the Dreamcast. And in fact, it does have, I think, one of the main characters from Cyberbots, Jin. I believe Jin is actually in this game as well, if I'm not mistaken. But this is a very unique 3D beat 'em up game, one that I would definitely recommend you check it out if you have the opportunity to do so. And this is a game that I would say if you had to burn something, this is one worth burning. As you can see, the graphics there are really sharp. It's a really sharp 3D fighter, one that is pretty cool. But this game will run a pretty penny. I'm not even sure how much these games go for now, just because I haven't, tracked Dreamcast, the price of Dreamcast games. But I would assume that most, if not all, are either close to 100 or more. The next game that I would recommend is Bangai-O. Bangai-O is a different type of shooter. It's like an arena style shoot 'em up game, like a run and gun shooter, where you play as like a mech that has like these different weapons and missiles and different things, and you play through different stages, taking on basically a whole horde of like miniature foes. So this is actually a very interesting type of gameplay on this one. I haven't really seen many games that play in this manner, in the manner of Bangai-O, but definitely one I would check out. There is also a DS version to this game as well. But Dreamcast is definitely probably the optimal way to check this game out. Bangai-O is definitely one that I kept in my collection. Another game you might want to check out, Dynamite Cop. Now, this is pretty much the spiritual successor to Die Hard. I recently picked up Die Hard for the Sega Saturn, and Die Hard is pretty much a 3D beat 'em up game for the Sega Saturn. Dynamite Cop pretty much takes a lot of that action and just brings it to the next level, not just in terms of gameplay, but also in terms of graphics. There's a lot of scenes in these games where you have to do that one button action, but you have to time it just right. But it has interactive backgrounds. It's really cool, different weapons, and the graphics look pretty good. The graphics in Die Hard are tough. I was actually playing Die Hard over the Christmas weekend, and it was great in the arcade as a kid, but when you go back and play some of those graphics, they're rough. And Die Hard is a hard game, man. It's hard to beat, but Dynamite Cop is a pretty good one. One that I would say might be worth burning. We have another arena style fighter here, and that is Heavy Metal Geomatrix. Not a lot of people remember this game, but this is actually a really, really cool game that plays on that whole like gothic style of in the early 2000s, it was like heavy goth. And there was a comic book with like, I think a vampire, it's Vampirella. I can't remember what the name is. You guys let me know down in the but there was a comic book that starred like this lady in this like dark, it was like skin tight leather type of clothing. I can't remember what her name was, but this game kind of plays on that whole gothic theme. It's pretty much a bunch of different characters that have this like, really weird and out there gothic look to them, but they all have different weapons, and you kind of battle in this arena style battler. Pretty cool game. Didn't play a ton of this, but I thought it was very interesting. There's not a lot of games like this that you see come out anymore. That was the reason I kept that one in my collection. Another really cool one, Gunbird 2. Now, Gunbird 2, you can play this a bunch of ways now. Gunbird 2 was actually included in the Psycho shooting collection. I think it's in Psycho Shooting Stars Bravo, because there's Alpha and there's Bravo. So I think Gunbird 2 is a part of Bravo. A very cool game to check out. I just really like Gunbird. I like the weapon system. I like the fact that you're when you shoot your bombs, you basically transform into obviously like another level. Like it's like almost going Super Saiyan, and you unleash these bombs that clear the screen. But you also have the ability in Gunbird 2 to charge your main blaster, and then when you release it, it'll release like either different weapons that continue to fire in the background as you're firing your main gun. It's just like the mechanics in Gunbird are really good. I like this game. I think they did a good job with it, and I think everything about it is just colorful. I think the cover art looks amazing. This is a very good shooter by Capcom. Definitely in my top 10 for sure of shooters. Then, of course, when you're talking about fighters, you cannot forget Project Justice. Now, we're probably going to see a re-release of Project Justice, and this is actually my copy of Project Justice is actually the manual, and the case is reproduction. The only thing that's legit here is my disc. I still need to actually get a complete official, like authentic copy of Project Justice, but hey, sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and Project Justice is a really expensive game, or at least it was. I know at one point this game was easily over $200. I don't know if this price is going to drop once it's released as part of like the Marvel versus Capcom Collection Volume 2, or if they do like a Capcom Fighting Collection Volume 2, but I'm pretty sure this is going to get a release on the Switch and the PlayStation 4 and 5 real soon. Well, not real soon, probably by the end of this year we'll see this released, along with I don't know if Rival Schools is going to be a part of that bundle. You guys can let me know down in the comments if they're including Rival Schools, but they should. I mean, Project Justice is just literally part 2 of Rival Schools with way better graphics. It's the same characters in the game for the most part. But yeah, this is a really fun game. I really like the way Project Justice and Rival Schools did air combos in a 3D format. Outside of like the Dragon Ball Z fighting games, this is probably the best 3D fighter. Um, yeah, but in Dragon Ball Z, the air combos really aren't that amazing because they fly, right? So here in this one, just the way you execute them is really good. Project Justice is one of my all-time favorite fighters, but one worth burning, right? One worth checking out for sure. Then you have Cannon Spike. Cannon Spike was like the twin stick shooter before twin stick shooters, because obviously the Dreamcast didn't have two analog sticks, but this is a very fun top-down style kind of shoot 'em up game. Not shoot 'em up, but like I guess like top-down run and gun shooter style, with a bunch of really cool and recognizable Capcom characters. So Cannon Spike is definitely one I would say to check out. Probably one of the most expensive games on the Dreamcast. Don't know how much it goes for, but if you were gonna burn anything, I'd start with Cannon Spike because it's definitely one of the more expensive games on the console. Then you have Mars Matrix, another one of my favorite shoot 'em ups. Definitely top 10. I would say probably top 5. Dreamcast had some of my Sega period. Sega makes my favorite shoot 'em up games. Mars Matrix is definitely one worth checking out, worth burning. The music and the gameplay mechanics of this shoot 'em up are, man, really good. It reminds me in a lot of ways of Ikaruga. That's probably like the game that reminds me the most of Mars Matrix, but definitely a great shoot 'em up, one worth burning and checking out. Then you have Gigawing 2. Gigawing 2 is definitely a good shoot 'em up. For the price of this game, you would think that it would be a lot better than it is, though. Gigawing 2 is a great shoot 'em up. Don't get me wrong. I think Capcom did a good job with this, and I think the bombs in this game are amazing. Like they really clear the screen. Gigawing is a little bit different from like Mars Matrix and Gunbird 2 in that instead of going with a instead of going with like a 2D sprite based style, Gigawing follows more of like a 2.5D format. So there's like 3D, like the background is rendered in like this 3D view, and it's a different take on a top down. It is like a top down shooter or a cave shooter, as a lot of people refer to them as, but not my favorite. Gigawing 2 is cool, but it's not my favorite. And just for argument's sake, Gigawing is pretty much in the same boat as that. Now, I've played Gigawing, but I've never opened my copy of Gigawing. I actually have a sealed copy of the original Gigawing. These are two really great shooters, but just not my favorites. These are not better than Mars Matrix and Gunbird 2. That's just my opinion. You guys let me know what you think down in the comments. Here we have another kind of like arena style battler, and this is Spawn in the Demon's Hand. So this plays a lot like Heavy Metal Geomatrix. You pretty much go through in this arena style, having these arena style battles with different weapons and movesets, and you battle your way through different levels. This is a very cool and interesting Spawn game. I feel like the Spawn games were just different across all the consoles. You know, if you like think about Spawn on the Super Nintendo, which is basically like a side-scrolling beat 'em up style game. You think of Spawn on the original PlayStation, which was more of like an action adventure game with like horrible, I mean, just terrible graphics. Then you get Spawn in the Demon's Hand, which is like an arena style kind of battler game. But Spawn Armageddon, in my opinion, is one of the best Spawn games. I think it's a really great action adventure game with platforming elements and a really cool variety of weapons that you can use between like actual weapons and then just the you know, magic that Spawn has, for lack of better terms, with his chains and, you know, his energy projections that he has. I think Spawn, I love the variety that you get with the Spawn games, but the Dreamcast version of Spawn is definitely a very fun one, worth checking out for sure, in my opinion. Not a ton of hack and slashers on the Dreamcast, to be quite honest with you, which is a little disappointing. I would have wanted to see more. But Sword of the Berserk rather will definitely give you your hack and slash fix. For a Dreamcast game, the graphics in this game are really good, like really, really good. man, you could stack this game up next to like some PS3 games, and this will hold its own from a graphics perspective. If you've never heard of or seen this game, just look it up. Just go on YouTube and look up the graphics. I mean, the stages, as you go through the stages, like, and you battle your way through the Dreamcast graphics were just on another level, man. Really good one. And then the hack and slashing is pretty good. This is a pretty cool hack and slash game. Really good story. Definitely one worth burning and checking out for sure. My recommendation. I would say check it out. And then of course, it's funny, I'm not an RPG guy, but the most RPGs that I've like played and gotten into were on the Dreamcast. Skies of Arcadia is definitely a legendary RPG. Obviously you have the Skies of Arcadia that came out for the GameCube, but that original retro experience is definitely going to come on the Dreamcast. Definitely one worth checking out, and it's just a really good story. Beautiful graphics on this one. Good story, beautiful graphics. Definitely one I would recommend checking out. And I mean, yeah, just giving you a solid list of games to check out for the Dreamcast. And these are games that you could basically have for free. Just go ahead and get yourself a pack of CDRs. If you want to do that, just to check it out. If you can't afford to buy the original games, and emulation is a little bit difficult for you, you can burn these games. You can still burn these games in 2025 and check them out. And then obviously, if you go to like different websites, like for instance, Video Games New York, they're still coming out with games for the Dreamcast. They're porting a lot of games to the Dreamcast, to be honest with you. And the homebrew scene on the Dreamcast is pretty dope. And that's one aspect of my collection that I've never really gotten into, like homebrews and things like that. But that's something that I may start exploring in 2025, just because some of those games look really cool to play, and they'd be very interesting to check out. So let me know what you guys think about the list of games that I have here. Let me know what you think about the homebrew scene, and do you think burning Dreamcast games is still viable in 2025? I'm interested to know your thoughts, and I'll catch you in the next video. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.